Hey, I'm Jack, and this video is called Should I Stay or Leave My Relationship? So I'm going to get right into this topic because if this is relevant to you at this time, it's probably painful and confusing and bringing up a lot of doubts, and it can just be a really gnarly, sensitive, discombobulating, kind of disorienting place to be in. So if that's you, I hope that I can help here today. I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can ask that will help you stake out the territory of, is there a future that you see in this relationship? And there's 2 quick caveats or kind of deeper context that I want to put in place before I get into these 3 questions. So the first thing is just to remind you that you often do know what is best for you. You often do know what your higher self wants, even if what it wants is at loggerheads with what you think or what you've expected or what you thought to be true. So, before we kind of get into the content of this, I just want to remind you that your guidance is often available to you. And it can come in the form of quiet knowings when you're having a shower. It can come to you when you journal or meditate or pray, or when you have a good conversation with a friend, or when you notice that on balance, over a period of time, you've somewhat been getting to the same sort of answer. And if that answer is that actually you don't see a way forward in the relationship, or on balance, you don't think it's worth staying in the relationship, that can obviously be a devastating consequence to come into relationship with. And sometimes the cascade of consequences, right, which might include, what's my security going to look like? What is home going to look like? How do I even know practically where to go from here? What's involved if we decide that we're no longer going to stay together or stay in relationship or stay in this home? Or even if we've been just dating for a little while, perhaps I really thought that this person was going to be the one, and now I have to believe that maybe they're not the one, but it was so clear to me back then when we met. There could be all sorts of things that brings up, and they are actually a different question, as important as they are to the question of, do you want to stay in the relationship? So you sometimes might need to give yourself some space to acknowledge there's a cascade that could happen from a decision, but you don't actually have to decide about the cascade today. You have to be with the principle knowing that might be going on for you. Right? The second thing I want to say, just as context, is for those of us that are in the world of transformation, one of the places that we experience transformation is in our relationships. And that sometimes gives a different, deeper structure to our relationships than is perhaps the conventional or Hollywood view on relationships. Right? What it can sometimes mean is that a relationship for you may not be till death do us part. It may be that a relationship, particularly at certain stages in your development, a relationship is going to bring you certain things. It might bring you into contact with yourself. It might bring you into awareness of your attachment pattern. It might let you know the places that you are not free, or that you have developed strategies in childhood, as we all do, that no longer fully serve you. So I'm putting that in perspective because I think it's easy to be in the perspective that, oh gosh, if this relationship ends, was it a complete failure? Was it worth showing up for it? Do I have anything to show for it? Is there anything redeeming? Right? Am I a miserable failure? And I want to suggest to you that actually what is happening in relationships now is different than what has been happening in relationships for most of our human evolution. And I don't think that that's particularly well understood, certainly in culture at large, but also really within the sort of world of dating and relating teachings, that there can be a certain time in your development where you're going to use relationships to wake you up. And whether that relationship wakes you up by you staying in it for the long term, whether it wakes you up because it delivers a really important message, that actually you need to take that message and take it on in your own life. It might look different ways, but that is a deeper context that could be in play. So I'm saying that because you may be having some judgment come up if you're thinking about, wow, even if you decide to stay in the relationship, you're asking questions about it. And if you're asking questions about it, for a lot of us, that can feel like, failure or betrayal, or I don't even know where to begin. And so perhaps I just kind of keep putting that to a side. But if your intuition and guidance keeps you coming back to this question of, is this right for me? Then that's not an ultimately sustainable position. So it might be worthy of your time, at least to explore more deeply. And so now I want to get into the 3 questions. So the first question is this good for the world? Is this good for the world? So this is actually a depersonalizing question. It's actually saying, beyond what you want or need and beyond what your partner wants or needs, what does life or the world or God want for you? What is in the highest interests of something that's bigger than you? Now, that can be incredibly hard to discern. Obviously, there can be huge amounts of sort of subjectivity involved in discerning what even that might look like. But you don't have to do this perfectly. It's just allowing a different perspective to come in, right? If we were saying, okay, let's put you two aside. We're actually going to bring in a number of people who want the best for both of you. And they're going to try and discern, is this relationship good for the world? Is it supporting more life and aliveness and growth and transformation, beauty, whatever are the highest values that you want in your life and your relationships? Then there is a way that we can ask with a bit more objectivity, something bigger than you is happening through this relationship. What is that? Is your relationship able to be something of substance for your community, right? Whatever that community might be. It might be your work community, might be a family, might be a friendship group, might be elders, might be, Little League baseball, might be all sorts of things. Is there a way that your relationship means something in a bigger context? Now, here's the tricky thing with this. You might get to the point where you notice, okay, yeah, the community has a real investment in our relationship, right? We do show up and, for the parent-teacher association or for the, city council, parish council, or we do show up and organize big gatherings of our friends and family on the weekends. So we actually are that couple. But the question I have is what I really want, how I really want to feel about my relationship, the kind of connection and romance and love that I want to experience, I'm not actually experiencing, right? So this is where this territory can be a little bit nuanced, right? Because it's easy to play a role in the community and be so invested in that role that some of you perhaps gets left behind. But if we take just for a moment, you don't have to say that this is actually true, but one perspective can be that over the bigger arc of our evolution, that life tends towards wanting more beauty and truth and goodness. Then how does your relationship stack up in that context? Is there more truth being metabolized because of your relationship? Are you able to see further? Is there more beauty? Are you making the world a more beautiful place together through your connectedness, through your dancing together, through your being together? And is there more goodness? Is there goodness? Is there love and prosperity and support and connection? And again, you can fill in whatever values might be important to you or to what you perceive to be the world around you. So I'm taking this transpersonal, right? And this isn't necessarily a perspective that people hold that much, but it can be something that takes it out of the realm of what do I want and feel in this moment, right? Because perhaps you're in a difficult moment if you're asking yourself this question. And it's sort of putting it a little bit into a higher context, right? And saying, well, does life want this relationship to continue? Does life want me to sort of roll up my sleeves, dig deep, do some work and figure out how to make this work? Or is life saying actually there's, no longer sufficient reason for you two to be in this connection partnership together? And actually you might better serve each other and the world by not staying in the connection. Again, these aren't easy things to discern, but this is a way into the question that might allow you to put aside any difficult feelings you may have about the idea that perhaps this isn't going to go forward in the way that you thought it might. And you might have feelings of self-criticism, self-loathing, self-doubt, guilt, just icky kind of bad feeling about that. And by saying, you know what, there's actually something bigger than you here, it might let you get in contact with beyond the difficult feelings that I might have about whether this can go forward or not. Actually, there is something bigger than me here. This isn't just about me or even my partner. There's something bigger. So that's the first question. The second question you might want to ask is, do I still want the job? Do I still want the job? Now, if you've been on my channel a bit, you might know that this is one of the ways that I talk about, if you are a woman that dates men, if you're dating a guy, does the guy want to become your guy? Does the guy want to be with you in a more serious way? And one of the questions or ways of looking at that is, does he want the job of being your partner? Now, I'm not suggesting by using that metaphor that, you are just work, right? You are probably adventurous and fun and sensitive and gregarious or deep, meaningful. There's so many things that you will bring into a relationship. And there is a part of relationship that is also sometimes work, right? It's also, it's commitment and it's steadfastness and it's showing up and it's being willing to meet someone's needs when perhaps you don't have a huge amount of energy yourself to do that, right? Sometimes it's going above and beyond. Sometimes it's sacrifice. Sometimes it's obligation. And if you're looking at, do I still want to be that person for my partner, right? Do I still want to go the extra mile? Do I want to be willing to do a backflip for them? Do I want to be willing to show up and, keep routines that serve our relationship? Do I want to show up and do the work, right? Do I want to be in therapy with them? Do I want to, reflect on the relationship and metabolize what's my part in what I'm creating here? Do I want to do that? And again, this is an opportunity to not say, should you want to do that? Or should you have the expectation that you want to do that? I'm actually saying in your, not just this moment, but in the sort of broader scheme of where you are in this cycle and season of your life, do you still want to be that person for them? Because for those of us that move in the world of monogamous relationship, you have a unique position in their life, right? There's only going to be one person who is in that role, doing that job, having that sacred duty. And you may or may not want to continue to be that person. Now, again, to get to the real truth of this, you have to kind of be in the present, right? The question isn't, did you want that job? The question isn't, can you think of a time where it felt really good to have that job? The question is now, right? Just literally in the same way that you might have really wanted a particular career path, and then there's a certain point where actually your deeper truth is, this is no longer what I really want, right? Now, for some people, they never get to that point. The thing that they wanted to do when they were 20, they wanted to do it at 40, they wanted to do it at 60. For some people, the career line is the same, but they do it perhaps with, a different expression, a different company, but we can see a clear through line. For some of you, it won't be like that. You'll have discrete phases of your life that have very different flavors and ways of being you. And that's also not something that in culture we talk about with much sophistication in my experience. I think we talk about life as if it's a much more linear process than for a lot of us, at least, it is. And particularly those of you that find your way to my channel. So do you still want that unique set of privileges, access, connection, responsibility, care? And you can be honest about that. We're not presupposing that you should want it. In fact, I would argue that you owe it to yourself and to your partner to get to the truth of that question. As I say, not just, I've had a super long day and right now, I can barely even, get myself into bed. But take some time, take stock, hit your journal, meditate, pray, walk on the beach, go to nature, talk to a good friend, get a therapist, get a coach, get whatever you need around you to be in that deeper conversation with yourself and finding out what is true for you as best as you can discern it. Question 3 builds on question 2. Question 3 is, am I good at that job? Am I good at being a partner to my partner? Now, this can be perhaps even harder to get sober and objective about. In many ways, this is asking the question of what does your partner really need, right? Not what you want them to need. What do they really need? And sometimes people, exactly can articulate what they need, right? Sometimes you have to reflect on different experiences and notice what they've said about them and notice what you've noticed about them. But if you've been with someone for weeks or months or years, you probably have, if you can put yourself aside, you probably have some idea about what does this person really need to thrive, right? Does this person need a certain level of security, adventure, freedom, love, quality time, right? We can go into love languages, quality time, words of appreciation, deeds, you know some of this territory. What does this person actually need in their partner? And in some ways, you want to do that list without really including how good or not you are at those things. Again, you're trying to bring as much objectivity as you can into the process. And then once you've got that list, you have to look at it and say, well, what of this do I actually do? Not could I imagine myself doing, not do I wish I could do, but based upon lived experience, even if I know there's some things that I'm working on to change, what really is my capacity to do these things? So this is a different question than do I want the job? This is, can you do the job? I might have, a love of Apple. If Apple needs someone to work in their Genius Bar, it's not me. I don't have that skill set of being able to go into a device and diagnose what's wrong with it. Could I learn that skill set? If I really put my mind to it, I probably could learn some of that skill set. Is that my sort of true path and native strength set? Probably not. Right? Now, we all get to these sort of questions in relationship because you might find out that the thing that your partner really needs isn't a strong suit for you, right? You might find out your partner does need a certain level of adventure, and actually you're a creature of comfort. And for you to, climb a mountain, jump out of an airplane, travel the world, visit an ashram, fill in the dots, that might actually take a lot from you, right? And sometimes there are those things that we can just acknowledge, this is a need my partner has. I objectively don't really have it. I do my best to show up for it, but actually I'm not particularly good at it, or I have to really negotiate it with them, right? So if I climb the mountain, which is really scary for me and I'll be dreading it for weeks, they have to, come to the work and do the small talk networking, socializing that they don't like to do. And there are accommodations that partners can find like that. I might be talking even like at the deepest level of what does this person need? Do they need to feel seen? Do they need to feel heard? Do they need to have a high level of physical touch? Do they need to have a certain type of security that might look different than just say like financial security? What is it they really need, and how good am I at those stuff, right? And again, we don't need to get lost in the detail here. We're not trying to tally this stuff up and give you scores out of 10 across all these different sort of psychometric profilings and then decide, you are 222 out of 350, that is good enough. We're trying to go for something that is actually a little bit more, what's the brunt of this? What's the direction of this? If you're a good student, right, sometimes you might get A's, sometimes you might get A stars, sometimes you might get 9 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, whatever it is. But we can sort of say at some level overall, we kind of know, are you a good student? Are you a good athlete? Are you a good firefighter? Are you a good partner to this person? And it can take us some humility and some self-awareness to actually be in the truth of that based upon your lived reality. The advantage you have, right, because we're asking a different set of questions of, do I want to be in a relationship with this person? You are actually in a relationship with this person. You have been in relationships, so you've got some data based upon lived experience together. And as we always say, we don't really want to be in the past or the future. We actually want to be in the right here, right now as best we can, with that accumulated wisdom of the past, but saying now in this season, what's here. Now, obviously there's a limitation, seasons can change. So if you've had, 6 great seasons with your partner and this 7th season has been really hard, you might say, we're in a hard spot right now, but actually I have that experience that we have those kind of good seasons. And maybe there's a season that can come back, right? You can plant a field for 6 summers and it can have a great yield, and maybe the 7th year, something wasn't right with the level of rain, or perhaps the soils got depleted, and actually, it's not going to produce the crop, but that doesn't mean that it's kind of over, right? But if you've had the experience that actually, when I'm saying about, can you meet your partner's needs? Can you do a good job? If you've never really had that experience of doing a good job, right? And again, you've got to get over yourself a little bit to maybe realize this. then that's a different thing, right? That's not like, oh, we had all those years where I was doing a really good job, and now, perhaps because I'm so stressed at work, or perhaps because we've started a family, or the family's left the nest, or I've been looking after a parent, or we have a real financial crisis, or I'm actually just in a place in my life where I'm feeling a bit kind of disoriented, low, depressed, ill, it's not really going my way. That might look a bit different. But if it's like, actually, I'm noticing that these things are their needs, and I don't think I've ever, even though I've perhaps really tried, I don't think I've ever been able to do a good job of these. There is a kind of love that notices what is actually in the highest interests of your partner, right? You could say that's actually one of the most meaningful forms of love, to say, what is it that my partner really needs? Who are they becoming? And can I be a partner to them in that process? And if I can't, as difficult as it might be, as excruciatingly painful and destabilizing and grief-ridden as it might be to get in touch with that, I might need to get in touch with that so that they can actually receive my love in the way of me saying, you know what, with some objectivity, I'm not actually being a good partner to you. Now, if you've got these three questions, is it for the good of life? Does life want it for you? Do you want the job? Are you good at the job? If you're looking at those questions, and you probably can't answer those in the moment, but perhaps you take some time to reflect after this video, and you hit your journal, or you kind of get closer to yourself. If you're looking at those questions and you're not 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, you may want to be in a more serious consideration about whether you stay in the relationship. Most of us don't want a relationship where we feel really 50-50 or even less than 50-50 about it, right? Now, these aren't the definitive questions. There are other questions. But what we're trying to find is as a more generalized sense of, yeah, there's still some life to run here, or there's still some work for us to do here. But actually, if you're looking and saying, well, it's not really promoting life around us, right? I don't really get the sense that life is necessarily wanting or needing this for us. And actually, I'm not really sure if I want the job or that I'm good at the job. Then those can be moments of sobriety. Now, again, remember what I said at the beginning, the cascade effect of all the consequences of even contemplating that might be true, let alone maybe getting to the point where it's mostly somewhat true. Those are questions that you can ask at a different time, right? Nothing needs to be decided about this in this moment, but we're pushing you into a more, what is my orientation to this? Even if there are consequences that I haven't yet considered that may come with it. And obviously, if you have more things involved in your relationship, right? Maybe you have a home together, maybe you have a family together, maybe you have other responsibilities, a business or something that you do in the world together. Yeah, those things need to be included in the mix. And you may not have any idea in this moment what that would look like or how those things can unwind. But I'm sort of offering to you that they are perhaps just sitting one level lower in the priority than this sort of deeper question of, is this actually right for me to stay in this relationship? So, part of how I came up with these questions was out of necessity, was my own consideration. And this has been in previous relationships, but particularly last year when I was considering, is it right for me and my partner to stay together? And mutually we came to the decision that actually it wasn't right for us. But my way into that was actually in part through these three questions, and my realizing reluctantly that though I still wanted the job, I wasn't actually doing a good job. And that wasn't because I wasn't trying or because I didn't want to do a good job. It's more, this is where I use the kind of Google engineer analogy. It's more like I actually didn't have the particular capacities that were needed for me to be a good partner in this context. And so looking at that and also realizing, I don't feel like life is supporting this relationship right now. I feel like the opposite. I feel like it's almost throwing up lots of obstacles and instability. And so I'm not sure in these questions whether, other than my desire to want the job, the other two I don't feel like I'm getting a yes to. Now, of course, there's lots more involved in this kind of decision, but if I really distill it down to its essence, my realizing that I'm not doing a good job, but I'm trying really hard, and that's a really hard place to get to realize that. It takes a lot of courage and self-objectivity, which is just about the hardest thing to have, right? But that was my way of realizing, you know what? I'm working really hard here, and that hard work isn't translating into goodness that life is easily supporting, or that's translating into goodness easily in how good a partner I am. So that's why I wanted to put this video in your reality, because these aren't easy questions to think through. And I think sometimes it's easier to have a smaller number of questions that you can focus on with more depth than to sort of ask yourself 30 questions and try and see if 20 or more of them are a yes. Actually sometimes going right to the simplicity and the essence can be what gives you your truest read. And, for me, part of why I've configured these questions, I brainstormed other questions. There are other questions I could give you. When it came down to it, if you can get to a clarity with these questions, what the power is, and this is in my experience true, is this is actually not just about me, right? This is not just about what do I want or what did I imagine a relationship could or couldn't be. This is actually saying, what does this person in front of me need? Am I good at it? Do I want to do that? Am I really showing up for that? Does the life or the community or the surround want this relationship? And I think sometimes that can be a more profound way in than just like, how am I feeling right now? Or what is it that I need? Obviously, what I need is an important question. It is part of the picture. And I'm saying there's also a bigger picture that supports your own decision-making. And in my own life, this has gotten me into some really heartbreaking territory that I didn't necessarily foresee, or that I had been willing to push these questions aside for a sense that if only I could get to this better place, or if only we could get to this better place, and then perhaps at a certain point realizing, you know what, actually that place isn't really arriving. So the data is in a sense. It can be easy to kick questions down the line to say, well, if only these things were in place, if only, life were less stressful, if only I had more wellness. And, I've learned in my life that actually there isn't necessarily a great time for everything, right? That there's not necessarily a time in the future where all these sort of other things will resolve. So you just get like this crystal clear view on your relationship. It's a little bit like in science, you want to control experiments, right? So that you can look and say, well, this exact variable, I know this is the only variable that's changing. So I know this is the, causation is actually, the correlation is a causative relationship. That actually means something in this context. In life and the art and mystery of relating with people, I'm not sure that it ever quite shows up that way, or it may never show up that way. So you may not be able to control for every single factor in your life to say, oh, is actually the relationship the thing that's missing or not working, or they need to be different. So you have to deal with the circumstances of your life as they come at you, and they may not come at you in the way that you wanted. They may not have the exact order, right? I know that some people have made decisions to stay in relationship because of their kids, and there can obviously be something really honorable about that. There can also be something that can be destructive about that if you're in patterns that just really aren't working to create enough sort of love and connection around your kids. So none of this stuff is easy. None of this stuff is, a download that you probably got culturally or in your education. But I will just leave you with the last thing. If it got to the point where you're like, I don't know, this could go so easily either way, give me the coin, let me toss it. I think you already have an answer in those situations that probably part of you at least knows you want something more for the relationship. Now, if you've gotten through, what I mean by that is you actually want something more than this relationship can provide. If you come through these questions and you're actually having the other experience, like, wow, there's maybe some things that I want to work on, but I do think life wants this for us. I do still want to be a partner, and I am a good partner. And I can see, by the way you can turn that question around, that my partner still wants to be my partner, and my partner can still be a good partner to me. Then the question is, what are you actually going to do about that? And what work do you want to get involved in? That's a different video, but you've got a sort of basis between you for saying, let's do some work. And maybe we have done some inner work. Maybe we need to find a different type of work to do or a different community of practice, but we're both still in that same orientation. If you are both looking at this and saying, wow, actually there's some mutuality that we share, that we perhaps both are no longer good at the job or want the job, or that life is promoting this for both of us, then again, that can be really difficult to know, what you're going to do, what the longer term way of unwinding that is. But at least you've got a shared reality about what's going on, right? The most difficult terrain is probably the one where either you or your partner thinks this is time to call it a day, and the partner's not in the same perspective. And it's rare probably that two partners come to the view that either we do want to give this a go, we're going to rekindle it, or actually we want to let it go at exactly the same time, right? So there might be a period of time where you're both in this kind of inquiry, or one partner's more responding to the questions and concerns of the other partner. But if you're having the experience that you are in disagreement with your partner about whether there's a future together, one thing you could do is to allow your partner to tell you, kind of in response to these sorts of questions, does life want this? Do we both still want that job? Can we be good at the job? Is in a way is to give their version of that reality to you. Not necessarily in a way that you need to debate them with, but just for you to kind of get that download. Is there some, truth or goodness that they're fighting for that perhaps in this moment you're not fighting for, and that it may serve you to fight for, right? You ultimately don't have to be in agreement with your partner to stay in a relationship, right? So if you're really clear, actually, it's time for me to leave, or they're really clear, you ultimately can't stop them, right? So what I'm inviting is the ability to be in connection with what is it that they're seeing or they're connected to that I'm not. Now, sometimes that truth of what they're connected to could just be they're really scared to contemplate what even would happen if we weren't in a relationship, right? So they're sort of more in touch with the fear of the unknown and the future and the uncertainty. Now, and that is a partial truth. There's lots of uncertainty if a relationship unravels, but that is different than saying, I still think that you and I are producing something that is good and true, and that is in our highest, or is in the highest of other people around us, or I still think I'm doing a really good job as your partner and here's why, and I still think you're doing a good job as my partner and here's why. That is different than how are we going to make this work financially, or what are people going to think, or will I ever find love again, or where do I live now, or those kinds of questions. And of course, it's so natural that those questions are going to flood in. You probably can't even stop that process. But I'm just trying to help you stake out that those are slightly different questions, right? The questions about the how or the what would happen if, those are different questions than the three questions that I've tried to leave you with in this video. So I hope I've helped. Leave me a comment beneath this video. Thanks for taking the time with me. I look forward to hearing your experience. Hang in there. Life has a way of clarifying over the longer term. So even if you're in a difficult season, normally difficult seasons do at some point give way to easier seasons, not necessarily in our own timing, but perhaps you can take a little bit of faith in the notion that life will often not give you circumstances that you can't cope with. So if you are going to need to be in either a rekindled relationship or a released relationship, life will probably rise to meet you and support you in ways that you can't fully foresee right now. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Leave me a comment. I'm Jack. Thanks.